Okay, today we are talking about the functions of modern banks. Banking has changed a lot over the last 10 years, 20 years, much less 100 years since the Great Depression. So we're going to talk about a lot of the differences between banking in the past and our modern day banks. We've talked about money supply several times, and remember, money supply is all of the money available in the United States economy, not the amount printed. If you've got $10,000 and you dig a hole in your backyard and you put it in there, it is not out in the world circulating. It's not in a bank being invested where the bank can pay you interest and loan out part of it. You've got to have the money in the economy for it to be part of the money supply. Liquidity. We have talked about this often. You all often hear me, liquid assets. When something is liquid, it can be easily converted, and we're talking about money converted to cash. If you own a home, your parents probably own their home and have equity in their home so that if they sold it, they'd make money. But it's not liquid. They can't easily turn it to cash. You got to put the house up for sale. You got to get a realtor, find a buyer. I mean, it can take time. If you need the money right now, you can't get the money out of your house. But if you have a checking account or just a savings account, you can run to the bank and get the money out. That's liquid. That's a liquid asset. Demand deposits. This is any checking account that can be paid on demand. Again, most of our checking accounts are on demand. CDs are not demand deposits. Those are certificates of deposits. They have a term limit. You buy 3 months, 6 month, 9 month, 12-month CD, 3 years. You can't get your money out until the end of that term. Money market mutual funds. This is where you you pull a bunch of money from small savers and you purchase government and corporate securities. Basically, a mutual fund is where you take several stocks and put them into one portfolio and you sell that mutual fund. You might have a little bit of Apple, a little bit of IBM, a little Amazon, a little Walmart, so that your mutual fund is diversified. If one stock's doing bad and the other's doing good, then you're still making some kind of money. Fractional reserve banking, we will go further into this in this lesson. This has to do with your reserve requirement from the Federal Reserve. You have to keep a certain portion of your deposits on hand, and you can lend out the remainder. And you're going to see this is like a domino effect where we can keep depositing, depositing, and lending. If you default on a loan, it means you fail to pay it back. Mortgage, this is specifically to real estate, whether that's personal or commercial. Credit cards. Yeah, credit cards. When you turn 18, everybody's going to start sending you stuff for a credit card because you're now an adult. And credit cards can get you into a lot of trouble if you are not financially savvy. Basically, what a credit card is it is a line of credit or a loan. You do not have to tell the issuing bank what you're buying it for, anything, what condition. And when you swipe that credit card, you don't pay any money, but then you're going to get a statement in the mail where you have to pay it back. And that swipe, you've already signed a paper that you'll promise to pay for those goods and services. Well, credit cards love people that are not financially savvy because when you don't pay off the balance, they charge you interest. And the interest is anywhere, 18 to 28%. Interest is when you borrow money. The principal is the actual amount you borrow. The interest is the extra you have to pay because you're borrowing it. Debit card or check card. Anybody with a checking account probably has one of these. You can withdraw money from a bank. You can use it at the ATM. You can use it to purchase things like a credit card. It comes straight from your checking account. I will give this advice. You can run your debit card like a credit card. It still comes out of your checking account. However, when you run it as a credit card, you fall under credit card protections versus debit card protections, and there's a big difference in the two. I've always been advised, run my debit card as a credit card whenever possible. Unless they flat out tell me I can't, I run it as a credit card. And then a creditor is any person to whom money is owed. So even if you owe your parents money, sorry, they're your creditor. We have two types of money. We have M1 and M2 money. M1 is, when we're talking about the money supply, it's very liquid money, your checking accounts, your savings accounts, things where you can go and get money quickly. M2 is going to be those assets that are much more difficult, like equity you have in a home, money you've got invested in stocks, CDs, an IRA, 401k, things like that you cannot convert to cash easily. Now this picture, you can tell it's old. This used to be a typical Friday. At lunch or right after work, people would be given a paper paycheck and then they'd have to run to the bank and deposit it. Now, we've had direct deposit for forever. I think I've been on direct deposit since I graduated from college. Makes it nice. The money's in my bank account. I don't even have to go to the bank. It makes it easier for banks because they're not lined up and have a lot of customers. If we look at our money supply, you can see what makes up our M1 components. The first one in the pink there, I mean, that's actual cash. It's actual cash we have on hand. 36.8 are going to be demand deposits. So that's like your checking account, savings account, where you can go and say, I want all my money, and then give it back to you immediately. Other checkable deposits, those can be, I've got a money market account that is not FDIC insured, but it's checkable deposit. I can get the money out. There are certain restrictions, but traveler's checks, you can see that's 0.1% because people just don't deal with traveler's checks a lot, with credit cards and the internet being so wide used now. That's kind of a dying art too. Banks are essential to managing the money supply. We need people to invest money in banks. Like if I invest money in a bank, then the bank can turn around and loan that money out to someone else who borrows it to go buy something. And that is helping the economy, that full circle in the economy. Someone saves, then the bank loans it out, someone borrows it, they buy something, the money goes back to the bank, and it's a nice circle. Financial institutions have several functions. We store our money in it. We save our money in it. They can make us loans for cars and student loans, things like that, for a home mortgage. They can issue credit cards. They can charge us interest if we're borrowing money, but they can also give us interest if we've got money invested in savings. And the biggest thing is commercial banks are not nonprofits. Their purpose is to make a profit. They want to make a profit. How do they make a profit? Well, if I borrow, say $100,000 at 7%, and you invest $100,000, you're probably getting 3%. So they make that difference from 7% to 3%. There's 4% interest that the bank makes there for loaning the money out. Banks are pretty familiar. We tend to have one on every street corner, it seems like. Makes it very easy for us to borrow and save money. This figure here, you'll see interest rates in 1990 versus 2013. Big difference here. Interest rates were very, very high in 1990. They're very, very low in 2013. They're still very low. And this is kind of a contradiction. If you were at that stage in life, you're young and you're needing to borrow money for a house, make that big purchase, you want to be in the 2013. You want interest rates to be low because that means you're paying less interest. However, if you're later in life and you've already got your house at a low rate, now you're at a point you want to be investing, these low interest rates are not going to get me a good return on my investment. I'd rather have the 1990 rates. But again, are you borrowing or are you investing? Makes a big difference as to whether you want high or low interest rates. Okay, this is our fractional reserve system. This is how it works. This is also a way that I can increase the money supply out there without printing more money. Let me get a good color here that's going to show. I think green will show up good. So here's customer A. Customer A is walking down the street. Oh, sees a $10,000 bill. I know, we all wish this would happen. It's not. But sees a $10,000 bill, picks it up, runs to the bank, deposits it in the bank account. So customer A has a $10,000 asset. They've got an account with $10,000 in it. Well, the bank is allowed to lend 80% because the reserve requirement is 20%. 20. So that's $2,000. So 10,000 minus 2,000. The bank can now loan out $8,000. So then we get this customer B here. Okay, maybe customer B needs to go buy a car, and the car's worth $8,000. So they take out a loan, they buy the car, and then they turn around, they get their car. That's an ugly car. Yeah, they get the car and they pay it to the car company. So then the car company, the car dealership, just received $8,000 and they deposited in their bank. They've got to hold out 20% in reserve, $1,600. So that leaves $6,400 that they can loan out to another customer. And we get customer C. Maybe customer C wants to do some renovations on their house. So they borrow the money, they spend that money to the contractor to redo their bathroom or their kitchen. Bank has to hold $1,280 in reserve. They loan out another $5,120 to customer D. And can I keep going to a customer E and a customer F? So you can see just in 3 transactions here, okay, we have lent out a total of $19,520. We've placed $4,880 in reserves, but this original guy still has his $10,000. Okay, it's like a domino effect because when D pays back his loan, that pays back C, then that pays back B, then that pays back A, and everybody's made interest on it along the way. Everybody's made some kind of money and gotten some kind of benefit. We have several different types of banks in the United States. We've got commercial banks. That's the number one that people do. Savings and loan, those are kind of not around as much since the 80s. You have some savings banks, and credit unions are really, really big now. Really, really big. We also have finance companies. This would be like where you go and you say, okay, I want to invest for my retirement. Can you advise me? What should I do? What should I invest in? Here we've got the U.S. Bank Tower in LA. Just goes to show you how big banks are. Whew, sorry. In 2011, the top 5 banks held 48% of the country's assets, wealth. It's kind of scary because if those 5 banks fell, we'd be in a financial crisis. If you look at the number of banks here, okay, it looks like, we do have more credit unions. However, commercial banks play the biggest role in the economy. They do. You can see, we don't have too many savings banks and savings and loan. Most people deal with commercial banks and credit unions. And one of the reasons why commercial banks, the numbers are lower is like First Horizon is one bank, but how many branches do they have? They have a ton. There's several different credit unions, and a lot of credit unions only have one branch. Computers came around in the 1970s. Before that, banking was done completely by hand. So computers have really revolutionized banking. Just like paper currency, we tend to use debit cards and credit cards rather than paying cash. I challenged my in-person classes, so I'll challenge you. Go ask your grandfather if he's still with us. Does he carry cash on him always? Most people, students will be nodding their head, yes, my grandfather, or he always carries cash. Because when they were young and starting out, they didn't have credit cards, they didn't have checks. They had to pay for everything in cash. So it's a habit for them to have emergency money on hand because that's how they had to live. We're so used to Apple Pay, Samsung Pay, debit cards, swipe here, that we really don't have to carry cash. Kind of scary. What if there was an emergency? Electronic banking has given us ATMs, debit cards. You can bank from home. I can actually go on my computer and say, ooh, pay Cumberland Electric this much for my electric bill. Checks clear a whole lot faster. And then store valued cards, those are prepaid cards. A lot of people use those for budgeting purposes. They'll set aside, say, $100 for spending. That's all I get this month, and they put it on the card. And when the card's at zero, they're done. Here's the ATMs. I remember when those came out, it was great. Like if you needed money, you went to an ATM. We didn't have cash back. We didn't have debit cards, so ATMs were a great way to get cash. And that is 6-4. See you at 6-5.